All right, welcome to tonight's Benicia Unified School District Governing Board regular meeting on May 27, 2021. I'm bringing us back from closed session. We had nothing to report out on. There were no comments during that, nothing to report out on. So I'm going to close the closed session, and I'm going to now open us back up to open session at 7:05 p.m. on 5/27/2021. First item on the agenda is, well, I just did that, 5.1. There's nothing to be shared out. Second is this meeting will be recorded for live streaming and archiving on this district YouTube channel. Next, item number 6 is the pledge. So I'm going to ask you to please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, for which its republic, for which it stands, one nation, indivisible, under God,
indivisible, with liberty,
justice for all. Well, I messed that up royally. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I move that we approve the, oh, sorry, Diane. I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Thank you, Mark.
I second it.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Okay, moving, roll call vote, Mrs. Martinez. Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 8, which Dr. Young is going to tee up for the highlight for Benicia Middle School.
Very much. So I'd like to welcome our wonderful middle school principal, Ms. Stalsky, who's joining us tonight to share some wonderful things that are taking place over at your school. Good evening.
All right, good evening. I am pleased to join you tonight to highlight our students at Benicia Middle School. In a year when we were striving to feel more connected to each other, the arts allowed our students to express themselves, share ideas, and take risks. Art education helps improve motivation, supports social emotional growth, and transfers into critical thinking skills. The following slides highlight some student work from virtual learning in the areas of photography, art, band, tinkering, and drama. I'm just going to remind Dr. Beatson for volume. You have volume on?
I do. Thank you.
So all of these, really, there's not much to say. It's really to take a look and just observe what our amazing middle schoolers produced while they're at home alone. We had a photography elective where they learned about all the aspects of photography. And so I just wanted to highlight a couple of our student work here. And so this moves into our art class. As many of our teachers needed to adjust this year, our art teacher definitely needed to make some adjustments to, well, you know, what she normally taught, the mediums she was able to use. So she introduced many different types of computer arts. But this is some of the pencil and the colored pencil pieces here that our students produced. This is some watercolor. One of the final projects at the end of each semester of the art exploration course was to identify a famous artist and produce your own work inspired by that artist. So I thought these two were pretty amazing. And what I think is great about all these pieces, especially the ones that are drawn on paper, they then have to, you know, take photos of them and upload them to Google Classroom. And coming up in the next couple slides, we have, you know, band and drama, and they had to also upload. So that, yes, the one on the bottom is at home symphonic band. And so Flipgrid became a favorite tool for our band director, Ms. Krisman. And as she would teach, and then the students would practice on Flipgrid and then upload their individual videos. And then she would provide critiques and, for them to continue working. So on the bottom is from Symphonic Band. All right, thank you. And then I wanted to give you a little glimpse of what band looks like now for the students who've returned in person. You can see they all have special face masks on that are designed for playing instruments. So they have to take off their regular mask, put on the band mask. It has a little slit in it so they can insert their instrument. And then each instrument has a special PPE designed to cover the end of it. And the student who is closest to the front is playing a flute, which is the most difficult because you can see the bag covers the entire instrument. So you can't see where your fingers are at all. And their hands slide into some little openings so they can play.
1 and 2, ready, play.
So I was really impressed. The first week, watched them struggle quite a bit with that PPE, but now they're pros.
1 and 2, ready.
And this is one of our new electives. We had to adjust some of our classes, for full virtual learning. And so many of you may know it as our woodshop class, but it was titled Young Engineers. And so we adjusted it, tinkering and design. And so the students would use online software such as Tinkercad, and then would design their items. And our teacher, Mr. Friedrich, would come to school every Friday and he would print it. And then students could come and pick up the items that they designed. So these are all pieces that our kids design, like our Viking helmet right there. All right, so this one might be a little startling at first sight. So this is drama. And our students it was one of the team building activities. So students in the drama class were put into breakout rooms and they had to work together on each of their own devices to create a face. So this is them coming together and taking an image of obviously a piece of their face and putting it all together. All right, at the end of our first semester of drama, they all of the students put together a virtual play, and it was titled Virtually Ever After. So classic fairy tales with a modern twist. And in this video, it is just one scene. So it's just a couple minutes. You can see if you can figure out which fairy tale.
Everdale, B&B Rentals. How may I direct your call?
Yeah, hi. I'm calling about the bed and breakfast I rented.
Sure, I can help you with that. I just need your name.
Goldilocks?
Great. And the address?
I don't know. It's a cottage in the woods.
I think I've found it. Yes, here it is. How can I help you?
This isn't what I booked.
Oh, I'm sorry. How so?
It's just not what was advertised.
Looking at your form now, you were interested in a quaint cottage, woodsy neighborhood, 2-bedroom, 1 bathroom with a continental breakfast.
But that's not what I got.
According to our records, it is.
The continental breakfast stunk. All they had was oatmeal. Is it either too hot or too cold?
I'm sorry. Can I put you on hold for just a moment? Everdale, B&B Rentals. How can I direct your call?
Can you help me?
Well, that's what I'm here for.
We rented one of your cottages.
That's nice. Do you know the address?
No, but it's a quaint little place in the woods with a continental breakfast.
Well, I'm looking for your reservation. Can you tell me how I can help?
My mom and dad are out walking.
That's nice. If you'd like to upgrade to our star level, you can get a complimentary gym membership.
I think there's somebody in the house.
What?
There's somebody in the house.
Can you please? I'm sorry for the delay. We're swamped today.
Yeah, okay. This is a nightmare. The chairs are either too soft or too hard. The showers are either a fire hose or a trickle. The toilets are either too high or too low. The pretzels are either too salty or absolutely naked. The pillows are either way too stuffed or just...
Hold, please. Are you still there?
Yes, and so is she. She's sitting on all the furniture and using all the toilets and eating all the food.
Have you asked her why she's there?
My parents said not to talk to strangers.
Okay, and where are you now?
I'm hiding in the closet.
Hold, please.
The TVs are either too big or too small. The shampoo is either too sudsy or too flat. The sunscreen is either SPF 5000 or just olive oil. The olive oil is either blend extra or virgin. The pans are either cast iron or nonstick. The soap is either... Now she's talking to somebody on the phone and just making a list of everything she hates. The shoes are either boots or sandals. The sidewalks are either too paved or not paved at all.
Get that okay? All right. So just imagine having a class of 30 students trying to coordinate a drama production individually at their homes and then splicing it all together. So that was just one scene that I was super impressed with. So I just wanted to share that.
Excellent, Ms. Dalsky. Thank you so much. Man, for me, it's wonderful seeing student faces and all the animation. So that was really, really wonderful. They're so talented. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Any questions or from the board as to move on? Thank you, Ms. Dalsky.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
the
you
kids.
so
Thank
much.
the
It was
kids for-
great.
And the teachers, because they helped put it together. Thanks.
That was great. So thank you for being here, Ms. Dalsky.
Yeah.
Next up is item number 9. We have our student reports, and I know today we have Alice Wells coming from Liberty High School joining us, and she will share some information with us about the upcoming events.
Hi, everyone, and good evening, President Zeta, Superintendent Dr. Young, and fellow trustees and cabinet members. My name is Alice Wells, and I am from Liberty High School. We here at Liberty are wrapping up the school year. We are finishing up projects and assignments, turning in work, and finalizing grades. We have been working with our advisors to update our individual learning plans and starting to plan for next year. Our art class has been working with our resident artist, Mr. O'Hare, from Arts Benicia. They have been creating art from recycled materials. They are almost done with their final project. They are creating a robot from miscellaneous items. This robot is 8 feet tall.
I saw that.
Wow.
Okay. We are continuing to visit our wellness center. We have been focusing on learning how to let things go and understand what we are really in control of. We have talked about the power of words and which words we would like to apply to our future. Personally, I think Ms. Beth is doing a great job. Finally, we would like to congratulate all of Benicia's seniors. This is not the senior year that they expected, and yet they overcame so many challenges. We are so proud of them, and we wish them luck in their next chapter in their life. We hope everyone has a safe and relaxing summer. Thank you, and good evening.
Thank you, Alice. It's so good to hear all these things from you. I love when you share with us. Yeah, lots of exciting things coming up, and yes, it's not different. It's not the same as it is expected, but make the best out of it, right? And yes, and thank you for being here for all the meetings and presenting. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. You're welcome. And you can sign out anytime. Thank you. All right. Bye. We're going to move on to Superintendent's report, Dr. Young.
Very good. Thank you, President Zeta and board and everybody attending and anybody tuning in this evening. So a few comments from me. So here it is, last board meeting before the end of school. We end on June 4th. And just want to point out that, this has been quite a year for everybody. A very long year, I think a very challenging year. And I want to, thank everybody, as I try to keep doing, all staff and parents and the kids and everybody for hanging in there with us. And one of the things that I was reflecting on a little bit, I recently read this pretty cool book about the transitions in life. And one of the thoughts is reinforced for me in the pandemic is that life certainly is not linear, right? I mean, sometimes you think it's kind of like a straight line. So I think the pandemic has taught us that it certainly isn't linear. I think it oscillates. And then we always just have to be flexible and prepared for the way that life unfolds for us. And so I want to congratulate everybody in our district for hanging in there, and we're just about done. And let everybody know, we continue our planning. So we'll be back full-time in-person instruction in the fall, barring any turn in the wrong direction. But we're, planning to be back with everybody in that setting. Couple of other points. So graduations, I want to congratulate all of our graduates. So Liberty High School, real quick, their graduation is Thursday, June 3rd at 11. BHS is Saturday, June 5th. And then the middle school is having a modified graduation on Friday the 4th from 9 to 10. So congratulations to all of our graduates and working hard and hanging in there. I'd like to point out that food services is another nice thing that we've been able to continue to do. And Ms. Courtney and everybody in food services are just wonderful. That they'll be able to provide free school meals, breakfast, lunch, snacks for summer or during summer to children 18 years and younger. And they will be distributing the meal packages, breakfast, lunch, snack for 7 days at Benicia High School every Wednesday from 9:30 to 11:30 starting June 9th. And all of that information is on the website. And I know Ms. Courtney sent out a communication on that as well. Just to point out too, summer school starts on June 14th. And I want to thank Dr. Beetson certainly and her team for putting that together. It's a big and much more robust summer school program that we've had in a long time, because typically it was always credit recovery, but now we've extended beyond that to offer a lot more services to kids, keeping in mind that they've been doing virtual learning for so long that we want to continue to provide those support services as we bring everybody back. And then the last thing I wanted to point out that several of us have been able to attend a conference that started yesterday, and goes tomorrow virtually. We tried to attend it last year. We had good luck for about a day, and then the pandemic broke loose, and they had to cancel the conference. So the conference is terrific. It's called the California Association of African American Superintendents and Administrators. And again, several of us have been able to attend. It's incredibly powerful. And fits very nicely with the work that we want to continue to do around equity, opportunity, and culturally responsive practices. So many, many, many very impressive speakers, lots of wonderful ideas, and some really powerful conversations. So just want to point that out. So there it is from your superintendent. We got a nice board meeting tonight. A nice long item from Dr. Beetson on the learning side of the house. And I know we have a public hearing on that and some nice discussions. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Young. And that moves us into board reports. And I'm going to turn this one over to Mrs. Ferrucci. She'll start us out tonight.
We've been hearing such exciting things. I'm afraid I don't have an exciting message tonight. I've been given the honor of sharing some news with our district and our community, sharing that one of our retired teachers, Sherry Coffey, recently passed away. We lost her May 6th, unfortunately. Sherry was a teacher in our district for 32 years. She started out teaching English at the high school and then spent most of her career actually at the middle school. She was a colleague of mine when I taught there. She taught 7th grade history, and in her latter years, she was able to explore and put a life skills program together for us, which was very well received and very positive. Sherry was an amazing educator. She coached lots of teachers. Some of us, as we came to the school, knew she was able to take us under her wing and also mentor us as well. She was a very kind and compassionate woman. Sherry is survived by 3 children. She has Gina and her 2 sons, Miles and Sebastian. What was really, really gratifying to see the other night is I had the pleasure of watching the video for the high school awards assembly. And her family has set up a memorial scholarship award, and it's the Sherry Coffee Memorial Academic and Community Service Excellence Scholarship. So this past year, we actually had our first recipient that will receive the scholarship in Sherry's name. So I thought that was quite an honor, and I thought that was quite an amazing thing to do. They're hoping to keep the scholarship going, and of course, if anybody wants to provide a donation to the scholarship fund, they would appreciate that as well. But I thought that's a really nice legacy to leave behind. Besides her talent and all the students that she has certainly touched, there will be a scholarship in her name for high school seniors. So to that, I want to say thank you to the family. And again, on behalf of us, I'd like to say how sorry we are to lose Sherry. She was an amazing educator. Thank you, President Zeta, for letting me share that.
Of course, thank you. And I know it's sad news, and it's never easy, but I'm glad we were able to share that out this evening. Any of the other board members, Mr. Maselli, anything to know? Dr. Moss?
Yeah,
Yes?
I'll just briefly share just a final update. Many of us attended the Solano County School Board Association Equity Series, and so what the Solano County School Boards Association did was to reach out to all of our elected officials throughout the county, as well as extend the opportunity to our superintendents, including our county superintendent. So we had a really good turnout, and just really kind of looked at ways that policy impacts education, how it impacts students, and how we can really work together to better serve our communities. And so we're looking forward to continuing this education throughout. We're going to have another discussion with the facilitators sometime in this summer, so we can look at what we can do to offer this again for next year. And we did have many of our electeds attend, many of our school board members, our superintendent, our district office staff also attended. So it was a really good series to start with. So looking forward to continuing.
Thanks, Dr. Moss. Yeah, I was very happy to attend that. It was very well attended, and it was nice to meet colleagues from all over Solano County. So great job. Yeah, I know you worked on that. So anything, Mrs. Grubbs? No, you guys have already shared what I would have said. So we will move on to our next item, which is the comments from members of the public. In an effort for our community's voice to be heard, BUSD has transitioned into accepting public comments via the public comment voicemail that will now be available. Members of the public wishing to address specific items on the board meeting agenda are requested to call 707-747-2787. One comment per person per item, limited to 3 minutes, on the day of the meeting between 4:30 and 7 p.m. If your comment is for closed session, make sure to state so, and it can be addressed prior to closed session. The board clerk will play the recording of all open session public comments to the specific items then being discussed by the board bylaw 9323 during public comment item. The governing board allows speakers to speak at regular and on agendized and non-agendized matters under public comment. Comments are limited to no more than 3 minutes per speaker, at which time the voicemail will be cut off. By law, no action must be or may be taken on any item raised during public comment periods, and matters that may be referred to staff for placement on a future agenda of the governing board. Please keep in mind to keep your comments respectful and that students may be watching this board meeting. And there are no public comments, so we are going to move over and go into our consent calendar, which is item number 11. And on the consent calendar, I want to see if we can approve the consent calendar as written with as we amended it And,
Right.
and okay, so we amended it, and I want to see if there's anybody that wants to make a motion. And Mrs. Ferrucci? Yes.
Sherry, I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended this evening.
Great. Thank you very much. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mrs. Grubbs. Can we please have a roll call vote, Ms. Martinez? Yes.
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 Yeah. No, and that's going to be pertaining to 11.2.
Thank you. We'll make a note of that. And yes, thank you. So now we're going to go on to item number 12, discussion items. I'm going to read the first item as a public hearing and discussion of the 2021-2022 Local Control Accountability Plan. And I am going to turn it over to Dr. Beatson.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. President Zeta, board members, and cabinet members. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present our 2021-22 strategic plan, LCAP, in a public hearing setting. Several years ago, the board has made a decision that the Local Control Accountability Plan, which is a requirement by the state of California, acts as our district strategic plan. And so this evening, as I go through this presentation to share with you what's in here, I want to remind everyone what the LCAP process is. I will take you through what the requirements are, what has to be in the template, and all the compliance components to that. I want to talk with you a little bit about the funding sources that go into the strategic plan, LCAP, the metrics. So how do we know how we're doing on all of our actions and services and goals and what's required? Then we will get into the proposed 4 new goals that we have and the aligned actions and services and metrics that go along with those. Inside of those goals, we can pull out the ones that are targeted to increase and improve services for our identified student groups. And then at the end, my colleague, Mr. Rahill, will talk about the budget summary for the whole entire LCAP. As we build this LCAP, the strategic plan, everything that we do is grounded in our school district's vision, where all students achieve at their highest potential in an engaging, inspiring, and challenging learning environment. And while there are a lot of beliefs and characteristics up here on the screen, there's a couple that I wanted to point out. One is part of this entire process is to create educational experiences for students and staff that are continually improved. So this is a improvement process through systems of accountability. And I really feel like while all of them underscore this process, that is one that really speaks to this LCAP process. And that we want to recognize the talents, have students recognize the talents in themselves so that they can be fulfilled, compassionate, and engaged individuals. And so we really think about what is it that students need as they go through their school with us, and how do we support them? And that's the underpinnings of the LCAP. So the first part I wanted to spend some time on are what is the strategic plan, how did it come into being, and what is the process? So back in 2013, the local control funding formula became law. And if you remember, that is when the majority of funding that came to school districts used to be in categorical funding or in buckets that had to be spent on certain things. Most of them were eliminated, and now we receive more of what I would say is more like a lump sum from the state. But with that comes the requirement to create this local control accountability plan that really allows districts to look at their own data, look at their own community, and determine what is it that we need to do to support students. And so it is a plan that really outlines how those funding dollars are spent. The other piece that came in with the LCAP and the LCFF is something called supplemental funding. That was another part of the Ed Code, and I'll talk a little bit more in depth about what that means, but that is where certain funding has to contribute to the increased and improved services for students who are English language learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and our foster youth. So that's kind of the requirement side of what the strategic plan LCAP is. We do get a template from the state that we have to use, and so that is not adjustable at all, and that has several components to it. And this year's, I will tell you, because of COVID, is even more complex than it would typically be. So in your board packet, you have this presentation, but you also have the 129-page LCAP in itself. And there's one thing on here, the very first few pages of that document are what's called the LCFF budget overview for parents. And so it's really just an outline that is supposed to be pretty easy to read about where the dollars are spent in the different buckets for parents. So that would be up here before where it says annual update. The next part of the LCAP, if you think about this in chapters, is the annual update. And there's two parts to that this year. The first part is the annual update, which is supposed to tell the story of what did you plan on doing and what did you actually do? What did you plan on spending and what did you actually spend? But this annual update in this LCAP is from the 2019-20 school year. So it was the year before, so the year COVID hit, last school year. And there's also an annual update for this year's LCP, the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan that you adopted back in September. Then there's a whole section on stakeholder engagement, and I will talk more about that and what the requirements for that are. There's sections on metrics and local indicators, so pieces that the state says you have to track, and they have to be linked to your actions and services and goals. Then there's the goals, actions, and services section. There's a section on that gets pulled out from the goals, action, and services and say which of those are targeted to increase and improve services. That's where our supplemental funding comes in. And then the end has some budget expenditure pages. So that's, if you think about the LCAP in chapters, those would be the chapters of the story of our school district. And then finally, there's a part all on compliance. So tonight is kind of the beginning of the end of our process, which is we bring this to you tonight for a public hearing. That is a requirement. It has to be at a separate board meeting than the adoption, which I will bring back to you this LCAP on June 10th for your adoption. That has to be done by law by July 1. And so it needs to come back to you at our next board meeting. After that, it goes to the county office. They do an approval. Typically, we have a meeting in July where they walk us through any, we've always done really well with that. They love our LCAP and actually hold it up as a model a lot in our county. But that gets approved in July, and then they send it off to the state for approval. And we typically get a letter in late summer or early fall from the state saying that our LCAP has been approved. So I want to talk with you a little bit about the annual update. It looks very different this year because we have switched from in 2019-20 when the LCAP was written. It had a different template. It was actually a little bit clunkier. I'm really liking the new template where everything is sort of embedded. So the 1920 strategic plan LCAP, the annual update had, and the LCAP in 1920 had 3 goals. So you can see them on the left side of your screen. So staff supports the academic, emotional, and social success of all students. We implemented almost everything that we had planned to do before COVID hit in March, but not everything. So we had some professional development monies that weren't spent and plans that didn't happen because we had to shift gears to distance learning. We had some money budgeted for outdoor education to support our Title I schools. Some of them did not go, so that money did not get spent. We had plans to do many different actions and services with our low performing student block grant, which was embedded and nested in that LCAP, if you remember. And all of those did not happen as planned, though we were able to purchase additional curriculum to fulfill that grant. And then some of our adoptions that we had hoped to do did not happen that year in that goal as well. In goal 2 from the 1920 strategic plan, LCAP, was around 21st century learning environments and technology. Again, a lot of it was fully implemented, and you can see that in the annual update section. However, we had planned to do some tech conferences, which did not happen, and some of the device purchases did not happen at that time. And then finally, goal 3 was around parental and community partnerships, and some of the great events that we planned for the end of the school year in partnership with Benicia Education Foundation did not get to occur because of COVID. So basically, the strategic plan, again, is where we write down what we said we were going to do and spend and what actually happened and got spent. The other annual update that's in here, which is a little bit different this year, is an annual update for the Learning Continuity and Attendance Plan, the LCP. You approved that back in September, I believe. And that was really intended to be a very short report which told the story of COVID, basically, and what we were doing as a school district to support distance learning, pupil learning loss, engagement, in-person learning if that was happening at the time, which it was not, and then the mental well-being and school nutrition for students. And so basically, if you remember back then, our distance learning, we talked about purchasing new technology, which we did, curriculum, staffing, professional learning, food services, and mental wellness. All of those were items and actions and services inside the distance learning bucket in the LCP. We were able to do all of those. Under pupil learning loss, we had talked about actions that had to do with a robust assessment system and being able to provide additional intervention using reading tutors. That worked really well. The assessment, which was the NWEA map back in the fall, did not happen as planned. We had a lot of technology issues because we had students on different platforms at that time. The family engagement, we had to write a re-engagement process for when students stopped coming to school and attending, and we worked with student services and our site leaders and came up with a great plan, and that has been fully implemented. In-person learning, we didn't list any strategies on this plan back in September because we didn't know what that was going to look like. And then all of the mental well-being and school nutrition we addressed in the distance learning, so we didn't have anything in that particular section of the LCP. So that was just kind of what did we say we were going to do over the last couple of years and what did we do? So now we're starting to move down into stakeholder engagement, which is part of this new LCAP. But what I do want to remind people, and it's important to note, is that during the 1920 school year, while we were implementing the LCAP that had been approved the previous June, this was last year before COVID, we also started stakeholder engagement for what was supposed to be this year's LCAP. And so we did a really robust stakeholder engagement at that time through the fall and winter before COVID hit, where we had task force, and we did a whole day on our professional learning day with all of staff coming in to give feedback. We did community forums. We had all of that data and feedback from our community for what we thought was going to be the 2021 LCAP. And then COVID hit in March. And so we continued and held on to all of that data. Then we implemented the LCP, and then we get to this year for next year's LCAP. We were able to use all of that information that we collected for before COVID hit and then add to it. So this left column talks about all the different ways and all the different groups that we were able to collect information from for 2 years, really. And a lot of it was the same, and then there was a lot of new information that we gleaned as well. Additionally, I believe it was this past March of 21, we received the information about the Expanded Learning Opportunity Grant. And with that came the requirement to do additional stakeholder engagement. So then we were able to use all of this first stakeholder engagement, and then we added additional meetings and parent forums and staff forums and administrator meetings to collect any other information that people wanted to tell us about the needs to support students and what our areas of focus should be. So all in all, we've had well over 86 opportunities for input and consultation on what you have what ended up being in this year's LCAP. So how is the funding used? Typically, in a typical year, the funding inside of the LCAP comes from two basic places. The principal apportionment, which is the LCFF money that we get for general purpose funding. And that is targeted based on student characteristics. And so high school students get a little more money than other students. And so there's a whole formula on how that is figured. And then the intention is, as I said earlier, instead of categoricals, which was before LCFF, this provides greater flexibility for us to spend the funds to support our students here in Benicia. And as I said earlier, part of that, 20% of that adjusted base, is supplemental funds, and they have to be to increase and improve services for our English learners, our income eligible for free and reduced price meals students, and our foster youth. This year, however, we have those two funding sources, which I just discussed, and then we had some other monies come to us. I'm going to talk a little bit about this one down here in the bottom right-hand corner. You've seen this one before. It's the Expanded Learning and Opportunity Grant. We learned about this, I think it was in March, and it had to do with accelerating learning, professional development. It was about $2.9 million. It has to be spent over the course of next school year. We brought to you last board meeting, May 5th, the plan for expending those funds. And I let you know then, and I'll remind you now, that all of the actions and services that make up this $2.9 million, you will find in this year's LCAP, primarily in goals 2 and 3, with one item in goal 1. And so it's all of the most of the actions and services that make up the goals around our academics. So you've already approved that part. It's nested inside the LCAP. The other one that does not need board approval, but it is also nested in our LCAP, is this $1.3 million, and it's called the In-Person Learning Grant. It also has to be spent over the course of next school year. And this one has to do with anything COVID related, facility needs, staffing costs, mental health supports for in-person instruction. So most of the items in goals 1 and 4 in our LCAP are being covered by this in-person learning grant. Not all of them. Some of them are through the regular LCFF. Some of them are through the supplemental funding, but that's where you'll find this. The top two are the ESSER. Those are our federal grants that we will be getting. Those don't need to be spent until 2 outer years, as you can see, 2023 and 2024. And we made a decision that we did not want to come up with actions and services or expenditures for these yet, because these two bottom grants are one-time in nature. They need to be spent over the course of next year. We're in the process of, once the LCAP gets approved, we will create really robust metrics for identifying which of the actions and services that we were able to put in for one-time use do we want to continue and use some of this ESSER funding to continue those into the outer years. And so this is just a different graphic to look at this sort of comprehensive funding that we're doing this year with the LCAP. So you have got the LCAP in the middle. Traditionally, our LCAP is funded by our LCFF funds, our supplemental funds. We have a little bit of Title I money that we get, and then other local funds. And that is pretty much Benicia Education Foundation often gives us some money towards one action that will be found in the LCAP. This year, however, we also have included items that are funded by the Expanded Learning Grant and the In-Person Learning Grant. So we have all this money. We did all the stakeholder engagement. One of the other requirements by the state is to link everything that we're doing to 8 state priorities. And that is one of the biggest components of compliance in the LCAP. And there's actually check sheets that the county goes through to make sure that we have all of this in here. And I'll go in a little bit more depth after this, but they have to do basic services is one of them. That is your Williams Act, your teacher credentialing. Our state standards linked to all of our courses. Course access. So how do our students who, hold on one second. Let me see that one. Course access is really just having a broad course of study, and that our students who are English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and foster youth, do they have access to those courses as well? Expelled and foster youth is only for the county offices of education. Parent involvement, what does that look like in our district? Student engagement, this one has to do with suspension rates, no, I'm sorry, that's wrong. Attendance rates, chronic absenteeism, dropout rates, and graduation rates. School climate has to do with suspension rates and expulsion rates, and then we use our REACH survey as well. Student achievement are all of those state tests and other academic achievements there, and student outcomes, which is how do our students with disabilities access college and career readiness, and this looks at our AP rate, so how many students are taking tests in AP and accessing those classes. So here are those 8 priorities again. In some of those boxes, you're going to see this little green word met, because while the state tells us and delineates what some of those requirements are that we have to measure and track, we also have what's called local indicators. And so in these boxes, basic services, we determine that ourselves, and we have met that. We have facilities in good repair, our materials are standards aligned, our teachers are credentialed correctly. Parent involvement, we do surveys, we have lots of ways parents can be involved. So again, we do our own measurements on that. Student outcomes, course access, and school climate as well. I already went over this, the state and local data that we use from our state dashboard. You've seen that, we've reported on that. Right now, there isn't a lot in there because we haven't given the SBAC and suspension, and it is not being tracked at this moment, but that will come back once we're all back in person. And then we have these local indicators as well. So now we're up to the fun part, which is the new goals that we have in our LCAP. There are 4 of them this year. In the past, we've had 3, and based on stakeholder engagement, we have added a 4th goal. And so I'm going to take a minute. I typically don't do this, but I am going to read to you the 4 goals that we have, and then in the next slide, I will talk with you about the actions and services that sit underneath those goals. So goal number 1 is social emotional learning. We had that as a plan when we thought we were going to be implementing an LCAP last year, but we have revised the goal a bit. And this one reads, all students in Benicia Unified School District, especially those who have been underrepresented, will feel a sense of belonging and connection to their school community so that they feel challenged and invested in a learning environment that values individuals and is accepting, respectful, safe, and supportive. Goal 2 is one of our academic goals, and it is with literacy and humanities. All students in Benicia Unified School District will demonstrate mastery on and be supported in grade level literacy and humanities standards in all content areas so that there is comparable performance for all student groups and achievement and performance gaps are virtually non-existent. You're going to hear some of that same language in Goal 3, our math and STEAM goal. All students in Benicia Unified School District will demonstrate mastery on and be supported in math standards with the support of all STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, art, and math content areas so that there is comparable performance for all student groups and achievement and performance gaps are virtually non-existent. So these 3 goals we had planned to do when we did our stakeholder engagement when we thought we would have an LCAP for this year, though we did add language around closing the achievement gap for all students. And then based on events of the year and feedback that we have gotten and really looking closely at our data, we called out a separate equity goal. While there's equity, and you can hear that in each of these other 3 goals, because equity is a major through line through all of these goals, we called out a separate equity goal because we are that committed to doing this work and we feel like we're not there yet. And so we wanted to really call it out so that it stands out. And this equity goal has 2 components. The first part says historically underserved and underrepresented students will have access to and inclusion in all learning and activities in school. BUSD will advance equity practices by ensuring that the voices of our students are represented, they feel seen, and their cultures and stories are valued, with a particular focus on Black, socioeconomically disadvantaged, English learners, Latinx, LGBTQ, and students in special education. So this is a graphic that really pulls out the action in 29-page document. If you match it up to the LCAP that is attached to your board packet, you will see goal 1 begins on page 74, and each of these items has more of a description if you read it in the LCAP document itself. Another thing I want to point out, and I'm going to point out several of these and highlight them for you, is that you're going to notice some of these are in bold and some are not. That's because the ones that are in bold are new actions and services to this particular LCAP that we have been able to do primarily with some of that grant funding. The other actions and services are things that we've done in the past that we are rolling up because they have been core to some of the work that we've been doing. So under goal 1, our social emotional learning goal, we're proposing to add an additional counselor to help service the elementary schools. We do not have one at the elementary schools right now. We've also added an additional mental health clinician, and that is someone who does actual therapy with students. We have some of our school psychologist services tagged to the LCAP, and those are tagged as contributing to our unduplicated students, our students who are EL, socioeconomically disadvantaged, and foster youth. We're increasing funding for a program that we have already, but we're going to hope to expand that, and that is our Second Step in Special Friends program at the elementary site. We are continuing with PBIS. We have continuing with our social emotional learning curriculum, so we have things we have to pay for that. This year we started, and we will continue a program called Care Solace, and we actually heard a presentation, if you remember, a couple of board meetings ago, and it is really an organization that helps link families to services, to mental health services, and it's being used and getting great reviews. Another piece that we've been able to do, because we know how much our electives and CTE classes are oftentimes the heart of what some of our more disenfranchised students connect with in school, we've been able to provide some funding for some specialty equipment for those classes at the middle school and high school. We will add some additional professional development hours for staff. As you know, we have 2 professional development days that are mandatory for all staff. We also know that that's not enough. And so we're able to add some additional hours where we will provide choice modules that are linked to all of these goals that teachers can sign up to do. Additional hours for noon duty supervision at our elementary sites. Another big one is that we're able to provide some staff for our wellness center. So every school site has a wellness center that was funded through a grant with our county. And we're able to provide some staff to help with supervision in their intakes and some data collection. We have an amazing nurse, Terry, in our district. Sometimes some of us think that she can clone herself because she can be everywhere. With the onset of COVID and all of the things that come with that, we are proposing to increase some support for her to be out at sites and helping with student wellness and sickness, I guess you would say. And then these last 2 positions are funding to help in our student services office. So in our student services office, it is also our special ed office and department, and all of the social emotional wellness, all of the special education, all of the psych services, all of the attendance programs, expulsions, all of that goes through that office. And so we are proposing a coordinator and a part-time clerical office staff there. And then in each one of these goals, you're going to see professional development. So we have professional development funds that sit underneath each of these goals as well. In the second goal, which is one of our academic goals, the literacy humanities goals, one of the big conversations we had was to because of this grant funding, we were able to eliminate our combination classes at our elementary sites. And what that, and to do that, we get to hire 5 extra elementary teachers. And so what that does, and the reason we thought that was an important action, is because it, in essence, will give teachers and students more opportunities to connect, because there will be fewer students in the classroom. They will get more opportunities for feedback, for support, for that first best instruction, which is what we know makes the most difference for students. We're able to provide additional instructional intervention aids. So we had them as reading tutors before, and they will be deployed across the district as needed. So it won't be that every single school gets 2 or 4 of these, but it will really be based on data and student need. And that is what we feel is the equitable way to distribute services. This next section here, we have a college and career counselor. We provide sections for designated EL instruction, some of the district and site leadership funding, the high school continuation program, Liberty High School, and the community day program. These are all actions that have rolled up from past LCAPs. And some of these, such as the district and site leadership and CDS programming, community day school, those are going to be tagged. You're going to see in the LCAP, there's a little box over to the right, and it'll say continuing, yes or no. Not continuing, I'm sorry, contributing. And that means those actions and services are paid for with supplemental funds, and they are contributing to the increased and improved services for students. And so, for instance, our continuation high school and our community day school programming have very high percentages of students on that qualify for free and reduced lunch. And so that is one of the categories. So we know that things need to look and feel different for them. We have funding for 2 content collaboration days, which is where an English department or all of 2nd grade across the district can get together to work on collaborative content. Those are typically facilitated days at the elementary. And at the high school, they put together plans for what that would look like. As you heard Dr. Young mention earlier, we have a robust summer program that will be happening this summer. We're very excited. All the invitations have gone out to attend. So we have over 250 students attending our summer program. It will start on June 14th. We are partnering with BrickSpace, which is a Lego robotics engineering program here in town. And so every class will have a BUSD teacher and a BrickSpace staff, and they will have challenges that have to do with whatever standard they're working on, and then the teacher will teach in as the kids are building with the Legos. They'll pull small groups, and so it's going to be really robust, and we're super excited about it. Just so you know, at one point, way back when, we were hoping to be able to open it up to all students in the district, and we didn't have the staffing to do that. And so we did a tiered invitation by need. And so we came up with criteria, and we sent out the first round of invitations. And then when there was still more space, we went to the next tier of students. And so again, we really looked at an equitable lens for how we were inviting students to this summer program. We are using the NWEA MAP assessment tool. We had hoped to do that earlier this year. We actually were able to implement and are in implementation right now. And that will provide lots of great data for how we can continue to meet students' needs in first best instruction and then in intervention as well. We have intervention sections at the middle school. One of the other really exciting things that we're proposing to do is that we provide every student in TK to 3 with up to $10 to spend at Benicia Bookstore. And so I'm in conversation with the owner of Benicia Bookstore to see how we can make this happen, where they can go in and get a book that will become theirs to help promote summer reading. We also help fund library collections so that they can stay diverse, robust, up to date. And so that's been something great that we've been able to continue to do. And then any summer PD for new teachers. Whoops, sorry about that. So most of these things in here, not all of them, but many of them are funded by the ELO grant. And so they have already been approved that you did that at the May meeting. The other thing that was in the ELO grant that you approved was this additional counselor over here in goal 1. And then math and STEAM, again, most of this has been approved already in the ELO grant. And I'm just going to take you through it really quickly. Just as we were able to provide teachers and students more interaction time by hiring more teachers at the elementary school, we are adding sections in key content areas where students have some traditional struggle at the middle school and high school. And so we are able to add many sections of ELA math at the middle and math and science at the high school. We have funding for adoptions and to help support our CTE programs and a match that we're required to do. We are proposing to increase the IT staff now that we're going to be one-to-one across the entire district. We will continue with our STEAM wheel. We get partial funding from that, or have in the past from BEF. And then we help Liberty High School with an after-school STEAM program, arts program. You actually heard our Liberty High student talk about the artist that comes. We do a guest artist that can come in and help with the programming there as well. We have funding for additional curriculum and materials, additional technology devices, because we know that we are a one-to-one district now, and we need to continue to be able to roll that program forward. We are funding for a data analytics program that plays nicely with ARIES, which is our new SIS system that we will be implementing next year, so that teachers and admin can look at data quickly and manipulate it in ways so that they can make decisions that will impact and support students. We want to continue funding outdoor education for students who need it at our Title I elementary schools. Another thing that we have included in this math and STEAM goal is, I don't know if it's a server or what, but it will be a power backup for data. So currently, if the data goes out, if the power goes out, we have only so much time that the data gets backed up for. And so we want to increase that. We support our band and our choir. If we're able to do choir at the elementary again, we've been able to do that for the last couple of years with funding for transportation, for uniform cleaning and music. We want to continue with Zoom because we have found that we get a lot more participation from families and being able to do different meetings that way. So we want to continue that. We'll continue to fund our credit recovery program and then professional development. So again, these two middle goals have already been approved through the ELO. Most of what's in goal 1 and what I'm going to walk you through in goal 4, much of that will be coming out of the in-person learning grant, as well as the other regular LCFF funding sources. So goal 4, I know it looks like there's not a lot listed here, but please know that many of the actions and services that sit underneath the other 3 goals support equity as well. And that's how we've given this lens to this entire LCAP. So we're proposing that we hire a half-time equity coordinator to help us hold this equity work, look at data, do outreach, help us do with professional development and strategies, because it is a commitment we are committed to making to continue this work. We've talked about this before. I believe Ms. Rice even did a presentation on an equity audit that we want to engage in next year, where we look at all of our curriculum and make sure that it is representative of the students who are sitting in front of us. So we have budgeted some funding for some additional materials. So we have an adopted curriculum, and I will just pause on this for a second and let you know that Ms. Rice has been working with our publishers of our adopted curriculum to say, what do you have for us? What work have you done here? Do you have extra units? Have you done an audit of your own curriculum? And so she's in conversation with the publishers of the curriculum we currently have. We know that we may need to get some supplementary curriculum as well after we do our audit and we see where we may have holes in our system. So we've budgeted some money for that. I've been in contact with the co-founders of the Willie B. Atkins program, which is a mentorship program for Black students in it's actually held right now in Vallejo, and we have several students who attend every year, actually quite a few. We've had great conversations about what that program is. It is a phenomenal program where students go every week and learn all kinds of things and get mentorship, from building resumes to dressing for success to how do you interview, all kinds of things. They go on field trips to historically Black universities. And so we want to be able to provide our youth who are interested, it's 8th grade through high school, the scholarship so that they can attend that program as well. We have budgeted for some additional PPE, knowing that next year may still need some of that. And so we wanted to make sure that we had some funding for that. And for continuing with our food service program, you heard Dr. Young say that we're able to continue that program through the summer. And so we may need to look at either more equipment or staffing to help continue that level of service. And then lots of, a big chunk of funding for really robust professional development. And again, I can just give a quick update here. We have been in consultation with Nicole Anderson from Nicole Anderson Consulting. You know her because she ran a wonderful board study session for us. We want to continue that work with her and our board next school year, and with our parent group. And then we want to contract with Epic for Education, Dr. Nancy Dome's organization, to provide services in many areas. They will be doing our 2 professional development days for all staff, all focused on equity. So those are the 2 mandatory days for everyone. They're going to work with our administrative council once a month for a couple of hours so that we can continue that work in between those 2 professional development days. So that the admin need that training as well. So they'll work closely with us on that. They're going to help us launch our equity team that will start with district staff and then expand to include parents as well. And there's a couple other things. So it's a pretty robust year-long plan. And we've had lots of planning meetings on what that looks like. And we have our final one next week. And so that will be a big chunk of this funding here. So I want to talk just a little bit about the increased and improved services. All of these actions are in the goals that I just showed you on the previous slide, but in the LCAP, there's a whole section where we actually have to pull those out and talk about them a little bit more. And so it's called the increased and improved services section. And it comes right after the goals section. We spend our funding, our supplemental funding, in these buckets: on leadership, site and district administrative support. We know that we have tagged certain administrative salaries to this increased and improved services because they work at a different, they have very targeted actions that they need to do with their students that may be different than at other sites. Our alternative education and community day program, I already talked about that a little bit. Our intervention and ELD staff and sections. Professional development, we tag a lot of professional development to this because it's all about how do we close the achievement gap? How do we look at students who have differing needs differently and provide access and remove barriers? We know that students who are accessing wellness and our counseling and our second step and our school psychologists, when we look at our data, oftentimes they are the students who fall into what the state calls the unduplicated student groups. And then again, we provide some STEAM enrichment programs for those students as well, because we know that they're engaging and they need that extra. And so at this point, we're at the end, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Rahill to just talk you through these different buckets of money that fund the entire LCAP.
Hi, good evening, everyone. These are the summary pages at the end of the LCAP, and these numbers do agree or they reconcile to our budget that you'll hear in the next board agenda item. And we're just reminded here of our total revenues in our district budget, our LCFF funds, local control funding formula. That's the majority of our school district revenues. We get that from the state for our students' attending school, and that's 42,844,000. Of that amount, of that $42.8 million, they've broken out the LCFF supplemental and concentration grant. We're not above 55% of our population in one of those categories. We're only at about 25% in our free and reduced program, foster youth or EL, English learner. But that amount of supplemental funds is $2,040,000, and again, that's part of that $42.8 million. Again, that's a majority of our revenues, but we do get some other state and local federal funds. Other state funds, $5.2 million. About half of that is it's kind of an on-behalf payment. The state of California provides about $2.5 million into the STRS retirement system on our behalf. So we really, it's not like that's money we can spend on anything. It kind of, we don't even see it. It goes into the STRS retirement fund. So we have a state, other state revenue of $2.5 million, and then there's a other state expenditure of that same dollar amount for STRS expense, the retirement expense. So that nets out. So that leaves, the other $2.5 million plus for other state revenues. And so that's some of those state grants that Leslie has been talking about earlier, our lottery funds, and then some special ed fundings. Local funds, again, we do account for we have our child care programs that are fee-based, not the ones that are state funded. So we have all of the revenues collected there, about $1 million come in for those fee-based child care programs. Special ed is, close to $1 million there, and the rest are like local donations and grants. And then our last section on revenues, it comes from the federal government, which you can see is the smallest percentage of our revenues of all the different state and locals. And so there, again, the majority of those funds, we get our special ed funds through our local special ed group, but those do come from the federal government. And then there's some Title I, Title II funds in there, about 200,000 of that would be that. So those are our total projected revenues at, the 51.5 million. And on the next and final slide, or almost final slide of the presentation here is we're looking at our expenditures now. The previous slide was our revenues. And so we have our budgeted general fund expenditures of $53,449,000. And that number ties exactly to the budget report.
Oh, no, you gotta be kidding me.
Oh, hi, Leslie, you're unmuted. And so you'll see that number in the budget as well. So our budgeted expenditures in the LCAP, we go ahead and we kind of put some extra budget expenditures in there just to give it more information. It's the $7 million. And so a big part of that is our state grants, which is, just over $4 million. We're required to include in our LCAP that third line item there, the $2,245,000. That's what we have budgeted to serve our high need students. And we might have just lost Leslie, but I'm prepared to share my screen as a plan B backup. Why don't I go ahead and do that, and we'll wrap up that. Everyone can see my screen now. This was the page, and we were just talking about this line item of $2.2 million. Now, LCFF funds, has been the way the state funds us for about, I guess it's been about 4 or 5 years now. And so every year, we are right around the $2.2 million mark. That actually includes, the reason why it's a little bit higher, it's actually closer to 2 million, our supplemental piece, but we also include in there our Title I funds, which also qualify to serve high need students. And so our Title I funds are in the LCAP as well. And then basically our other funds, which aren't here in the LCAP, they are related to just our general operations of the school district with the staffing, teachers, and and administration and classified and employees, the salary and benefits, and then, the operational supplies and utilities and other costs associated with operating the district aren't reported here in the LCAP, but they are reported in the budget. And so I believe as we go to the next one, that is the last slide, and this was going to lead into any discussions and questions. I'm not sure if Leslie Beatson has joined us back yet. I'll stop sharing my screen. And I don't see Miss Beatson on the screen yet. So, here she's coming back on now.
I thought being here, I'd be safer. Sorry about that, everybody.
So Leslie, I just shared my screen, and I walked through the last slide on the budgeted expenditures, and I can share my screen again if you'd like, or if you want to reshare your screen with your presentation.
I got it.
And we're now here at this last slide for discussion and questions.
Okay.
I guess at this time, I'd like to open it up for a public hearing for any comments or discussion of the 2021-22 local control and accountability plan. So does anybody have any questions or comments that they would like to make regarding Leslie's? Okay.
Can I interrupt before you start? You need to close our board meeting and then open a public hearing.
Okay, I'd like to temporarily close our meeting.
Right.
And now I would like to open up a public hearing for any comments or questions.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt.
That's okay.
No problem. All right. So I just want to say thank you, Dr. Beatson, for the thorough information. And I also appreciate you providing me with the copy, just so I can really take a close look. And so I just want to make sure I'm understanding how the services are being provided. So for example, I know with PBIS, it seems like there's definitely thousands of dollars being allocated to continue to run PBIS. And so I just want to understand how it works in terms of, is there like an annual subscription? Because I remember when the county office had kind of started rolling it out and invited all of our Solano County school districts to participate. But is there some type of a ongoing subscription? So that's that part of my question. But then the other part is because I know that we also have second steps. And so are we running just two different systems in terms of, of working with students and creating these positive environments and things of that nature?
Great question. So let me take the first part.
Okay.
PBIS, there are several line items in the LCAP. So we do PBIS leads, where we have a lead at each site to collect data. They have meetings every month. They look at data. They do all of that work at the site level. So we pay some stipends for that. There is a subscription to what's called the SWIS, and I don't know what it stands for, but it's the data collection system for that. Right now, that's what we've done because we didn't have another way to do that. We will continue that for next year, but we may reevaluate and see if ARIES, our new SIS system, can kind of replace that. So that's really where a student has a referral, because there's this whole referral process if there's a behavior incident, and ways to track what kinds of interventions are happening for that student. So it's not just the punitive side, but how do we track what interventions we're doing when a student has a referral for a particular incident. So there's a funding cost for that. We also we're lucky because Jen Baker, who is our district behaviorist, receives yearly training to become the trainer of trainer for us. And so she's able to continue to train all of our school site staffs. What I will tell you is we've had some starts and stops to our launch that we started several years ago. And so part of the PBIS process, as you know, is it's not top down, like everybody has to do exactly all of these things. The schools have to look at their own school culture, develop their school rules. Some of them took right off and did it very quickly, and others had some different issues to get started. And then over the last year and a half with COVID, it's been more difficult to do. There's been some different needs. And so Ms. Corona and I were just talking the other day about the need to kind of relook and reboot and relaunch that whole process as we come back to in-person learning. But all schools do, they have their school rules. They teach what those school rules look like in all different settings. They have the positive, the tickets, right? The reward. So kind of caught being good, because it's really, as you know, it's about boosting the positive. And when there is an incident, trying to dig deeper and find out how can we provide some interventions that it's not just a suspension or out of class.
Yeah. And that calls for a continual, like, pouring money into that particular, because it seems, I guess in my mind I'm thinking, okay, if we've gone through a process where some of our staff have been like trained or whatever, and they've already gone through the process of creating this environment at the school site, I was just wondering if there needs to continue to be, thousands of dollars going into it, where I appreciate the incentive part, because I know, like, the tickets and helping to keep students on track, but I'm just wondering if it still needs to be that much money poured into it. And maybe it is. I just wasn't sure about that.
Well, I think one of the biggest costs, and I'm looking now because I don't have it, I should have this document memorized, but I don't, to see what the cost is. Like I said, we are going to look at, can we absorb the cost of the data system into Aries, for our new data system.
All right, and then the other part was just the second step. So I know that, and I know I'm familiar with that program as well. I was just wondering if that is that kind of all the way through as well, because there's just two different.
There's really two different focus. The second step and Special Friends program is like an intervention for students, and so it's teaching kids conflict resolution, self-control. How to make friends, all different kinds of strategies. Some of it is done in whole group settings, some of it's done in small group, and some of it's done in individual. So it's kind of counseling light, if you will, at the elementary school.
Okay, and then the other part, I do have
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to make sure on, so for the Willie B. Atkins program, of course I'm familiar with the program. So we're just offering scholarships to students, and we're not going to house the program here, because I guess my concern would be is if our students are to participate, then why wouldn't we offer that to our students here instead of sending them off to a different community to go participate in the program? So that means that now that the families they'll have to figure out their kids' transportation and all that type of thing, instead of us being able to offer the program here. So there's no way that we can offer it in its full integrity.
We can. When I was meeting with the Willie B. Atkins folks, they talked about two different ways to do it. One is that we pay for students to attend their program, and then the other is that we could host it here. There was a really big cost difference, and right now we're not sure how many students would want to participate. So our thought was this year we would start by offering the scholarship, seeing what that interest is. So it's about I think she said $250 or $350 per student. And it sounded like it was a one-time cost once they join that program. That's that for the year. If we were to host it here on site, we'd have to pay the trainers, the facilitators and all that. And it was about it was over $100,000. And so we did some math to say, I don't know how many students we have that would want to do that. So we thought this would be a first good step.
Right, because I know that they would probably want to have two directors, where if we don't have the numbers, and it seems like then we would be, or you would be able to work with them on cost. So maybe it's not that amount. Maybe it's kind of another negotiated amount depending on how many students we have. I just hope that we could keep that open as a possibility, because I just feel like it almost, I guess it feels like if my kids, here are my kids, I want them to get this great service. And then I'm going to tell them, okay, then you're going to have to go over, into the next community in the next town to go get it. And you just figure out how to get there. And I just feel like if these are our students, then we would want to provide the best possible services for them. And if that means that, if it's a cost over here, if we're finding that that's not necessarily, feasible, because even like with professional development, it still is like two mandatory days of professional development. And then our staff has this option to attend or not attend. So I don't know. I just, and then even maybe looking at working with a staff member to work with them. And so maybe, one of their extra service agreements could be to help with that particular program, since we do have some of our staff members who are really, trying to do the work around equity and, and just kind of taking our students to the next level. So maybe that could be an opportunity for someone else to do that as well. So I don't know, just my thinking.
Absolutely.
And make sure
Absolutely.
that we're doing everything that we can.
Thank you, Dr. Moss. Any other comments or questions that we have for Dr. Beatson? No? Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing and then open back up our regular scheduled board meeting. And we will thank Leslie. Dr. Beatson, thank you so much for putting that all together. It's a lot of work, a lot of effort went into those slides all by itself, and that's just a part of the bigger picture. So I want to thank you for your hard work. I really do appreciate it.
It's a great team, and we had lots of collective effort around all of this. So
awesome.
I'm excited about it, and I'll bring it back to you in June for adoption.
Great. Thank you so much. So at this point, we're going to move on to item 12.2, and it is regarding the governing board provides a public hearing on the 2021-2022 budget using the information from the governor's May revise. And at this time, I'm going to ask Mr. Rahill if he would join us and share his information.
Yes, good evening, everyone. Again, great to be here with you tonight and present the public hearing, or the information for the public hearing on the 2021-22 budget. Just wanted to check in real quick. Did we formally make the move into public hearing? Or not yet? And we can do that. I can present the information and then you can go into public hearing, or whatever you're comfortable with.
Well, okay, Jenna, I don't know if it was done before or after. I will happily move into a public hearing regarding the information that Mr. Rahill is going to be sharing with us regarding our budget.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, so I'll go ahead and share my screen and bring up the information that's included in your board packet. We have some highlighted financial statements, again, for our 2021-22 budget. The big thing that we look at each time are what are the key fiscal factors that drive our budget for our school district over not only just the current year, but the outgoing years, the outer 3 years total. We've even extended it beyond that a little bit. There's a lot that will happen between now and those outer years, but we just wanted to keep presenting the information, the best information we have at this time. So in our school district, in our school district, we take a look at our salary related costs. Our employees are paid by a salary schedule with increases on those. And so each year it changes a little bit. For the 21-22 school year, when we looked at the actual numbers, it's projected to be a little bit lower, closer to 300,000 instead of the normal, it's closer to 400,000. But so we've gone ahead and used that lower number in our 21-22 budget. As we've been talking the last couple of years, the employee retirement systems have been faced with their financial struggles, and they have been asking employers and employees to contribute more into those retirement systems. And so this year, I should point out that we put in the current 2021 year as just a ballpark. We're kind of wrapping up that year now. And we're really looking at this column for 21-22 for our budget year. And those other columns out to the right are for the following second, third, and fourth year out. So we were just talking about our retirement costs. You know, it's a significant increase, and it's at $337,000 next year. We've been planning on that. We've been budgeting that all along. It changes a little bit each year, but we have been planning this for many years, or at least over the last several years when the retirement systems have reached out. This budget year for 21-22, in regards to the unemployment rates, the way that unemployment insurance work is, we're part of a state pool, and kind of regardless of what your actual own employees do, we're subject to that state rate, as all schools are in the state of California. So we're experiencing a significant increase in unemployment, mainly due to all of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we're hopeful that that will go away in those outer years, but we don't know that yet. And so for right now, we're accounting for that increase for at least that 21-22 school year. On the good news, our workers' compensation rate, which we're required to have for all of our employees, we're experiencing some positive financial news from that group, and we actually have some savings towards our workers' comp for next year. In our second key fiscal factor area, it focuses more on just other revenues and expenses. And the big one here are these state grants, state and federal grants. 2021 was kind of what we're calling round one, or I don't know if we're calling it or if it's just me. And so we've done a good job of getting and spending those first round of COVID funds on school opening and serving kids with their learning needs. The next round, this is just the way that the money works. If we're getting the expanded learning grant, we'll get that this month and probably by June. So we're basically receiving those revenues in the current year, and basically that's a negative number. We're spending those out according to that expanded learning grant plan that the board has looked at and approved in the 21-22 year. On top of that, you just heard from Dr. Beetson, this round two amount, this $1,333,000 number, that's the in-person grant. So we're just showing you the magnitude of the dollars that our district is receiving in regards to this round two of influx from these are the state of California funds for expanded learning and in-person instruction. We continue to work with the Solano County Special Ed Group, the SELPA. So we're seeing some funds increased here. We'll continue to meet. Our next meeting is September after school gets started up again, and we will meet again and see if there's additional revenues that they might be sending our way based on an actual state budget. I'll just point out over here in the outer years of 22-23, that's kind of what we're calling round three. And those are basically the federal dollars we're getting related to, expanded learning or in-person instruction. They all the rules probably, they follow pretty closely. And so we are, the multi-year plan is to spin down the state monies first when we have to, and see what works, what doesn't work, or what doesn't work, or since the dollar amounts in the outer years, do some prioritization about what we might consider continuing into 22-23. I just put that dollar amount there. It's possible there's a chunk of that we could even postpone out to 23-24. We wanted to make that decision. So during the 21-22 school years, as we operate these programs and start to plan for the outer years, we'll have that conversation with you, probably in January of 22, before that school year starts. I'll scroll down, and in number 3 here, all of these numbers and colors, it kind of, what we do is we track our student enrollment and our student attendance, because again, our biggest funding is from the state's local control funding formula, and it's based on students attending our school, not just being enrolled. And what you see here is we track how our students are enrolling, and Benicia Unified, we are a declining enrollment district, like most districts in California. The state of California is experiencing on a whole declining student enrollments, for either we have less kids being born, and or families with children are moving out of state, and or students are enrolling in schools or programs outside of the public school system. So we have a manageable amount of student declining enrollment, about 100, and then it's either 45 or 40. Right now we're hoping that this will stabilize and we'll stop declining out there. Our class sizes, our grade levels, it's inching towards more of a class size of 300. We used to have our larger grade levels were closer to 350, and those just haven't happened. And as the kids have moved through the system, those class sizes of 300 or 310 or 320, those have kind of stuck as the kids have gotten older in the system. So we are enjoying in 2021-22, so this is the budget year we're talking about. You see this big 0 in green is normally we would have gotten deemed for our declining enrollment in 21-22, but because of COVID and the rules of the state's holding us harmless for a year for our declining enrollment, and they're saying, okay, we're not going to make you take that loss in funding due to the loss in enrollment, but in 21-22, but you're going to have to take that hit in less enrollment, in less attendance out there in 22-23. So this 22-23 number, it's a bigger number, and we'll be talking about that more, next year, and as we get more up-to-date numbers to make other adjustments to address that loss in funding in that outer year. Because our student enrollment is declining, we look at our staffing needs and we make adjustments. In 21-22, we've made some local decisions here with combo classes and some other sections to actually not have a savings on the staffing side. But we can take care of that through some of our grant funding needs. I'm just going to scroll down to the last 2 items here on our key fiscal factors page. A big one on the revenue side is the governor proposes a cost of living adjustment, an increase each year to the funding that the state provides. And right now his governor's May revised proposal is a 5.07% increase that applies to most state funds. I think special ed would only be like 4%, but for the most part, that cost of living allowance would be at 5.07%. I'll take the opportunity here. It's in my summary at the very end as well. These numbers, again, are based on the best information we have at this point in time. And that 5.07% increase comes from the governor's proposal. It's a proposal at this time from his May revised budget, which now goes to the state Senate and the state Assembly for those committees to look at. And they both have come back, the subcommittees have come back with budget proposals, which have some modifications, but the information I've seen and received have not indicated any changes to the governor's COLA proposal of 5.07. I haven't seen any communication about that. And so the next step is it goes from the state Senate and the state assembly subcommittees into their actual committees for the budget. And then that goes to the leadership and the governor to, so that the state legislature can vote on a budget by June 15th, give it to the governor for him to sign or make any changes. So that was a long description of just kind of the political process to adopt a state budget. But as a school district, we're required to pass the school budget, and we're required to use the best information we have at this time, which would be that 5.07% cost of living allowance, because it is on the higher end, and we're being held harmless for our student enrollment and attendance. We'll see about $2 million more in funding from that local control funding formula. So and then just real quick, in the outer year, the reason why it would be negative is because even though the governor is proposing a 2.48% COLA for that outer year, we're getting hit for that amount of declining enrollment in that 22-23 year. So I have another slide here that kind of documents our retirement costs for our employee groups. We have 2 retirement systems, depending on your classification. And this just kind of shows that, shows the retirement rates contribution over the years, which was very steady, up until, around 2013, 14, when the state retirement systems started asking for more monies to meet the obligations. And so we're tracking that each year and making sure our budget is adjusted for those added costs. The next slide, the pie chart here shows our revenues budgeted for our school district next year. It's at $51.6 million. Again, this number agrees to the revenues in the LCAP. You can see in the pie here, the big blue or purple section for 79% is the base amount we get from the local control funding formula. The purple piece is the additional $2 million we get for the supplemental. The balance of that comes from the other state and federal and local. On the expenditure side, we have in our budget $53.5 million, and basically our district provides the educational service and related services for our students. We do that with our staff, and so our salary and benefits make up the majority of our expenditure budget. It's anywhere in the mid to low 90s, so it's at almost every school district in the state. So we follow that trend, and the remaining 15% or so is spent on the supplies and operational services to operate the district. We are operating at a net loss or a net deficit for 21-22, and that's basically due to the fact that you remember earlier in the slide we record that one big state grant. We recorded the revenues last year, but we don't actually expend them until this current year. And so we have the expenses there from the expanded learning grant, which causes that operating net to be zero. Just also noteworthy is in the expenditures, again, we use the best information that we have at the time. And so all school districts, all public agencies with their employee groups, they are subject to negotiations with their salary and benefits for the budget year. And so we are all in process with that at the moment. And so we don't attempt to include any of those such costs in the budget expenditures until those are finalized and ratified. And so through that process, when that happens, we bring back a budget adjustment and update these numbers. So these numbers do not include any amounts for potential settlement on there. We put those in after they're gone through the process and been ratified. And so at the end of the year, the district has its remaining fund balance with designated reserves, 3% reserve from the state, and board policy reserve. The sum of those two is about 1 month's payroll. We have some one-time monies and unrestricted and restricted programs. So we're just under $10 million with our fund balance at the end of the year. And we kind of take a look here up at the top at kind of some ongoing deficits. We track that, make sure that those don't get out of hand and get too large. And we roll that into our fund balances over the years to make sure that we're maintaining the required state reserve and our local board policy reserve, which this budget is presenting that we are in compliance with that. We just have 2 quick slides, which is included in your packet, giving us all the reasons to maintain a reserve, our critical fiscal responsibility to adopt that sound budget. Also, we are dependent upon the state to get the revenue. Right now, we are enjoying that the state of California is doing better than expected, and those funds are being transferred down to school districts. But in times like just within the last year due to COVID, when everything was up in the air, the reserve could have really helped bail us out if it was needed. So now I'm going to just kind of jump over to the summary slides, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Our goal is to provide that positive financial certification for our adopted budget. Big determination there. We look at our local control funding formula and provide a budget that maintains that state recommended 3% reserve. The local control funding formula, we're just reminded that's how the state funds school districts. It is for the 21-22 school year for our school district about $9,616. That does include that 20% increase for students enrolled in free and reduced who are English learners or foster youth. And our school district, about 25% of our student population falls within one of those 3 groups. Our next steps, we will present this budget. This is a public hearing today. So in just a couple weeks on June 10th, we bring back the budget to request for your adoption. We also bring back the LCAP on the same night, just like we did tonight. We'll ask you to adopt the LCAP on June 10th. After this is approved, we submit that to the Solano County Office of Ed and the California Department of Ed. Meanwhile, the state legislation and the governor is working to approve a state budget. And once they do that, we come back to the school board at its first meeting in August and share any information that comes from the actual state adopted budget. And that's the information I have to share with you tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Rahill, for tidying it all up in a nice little package for us to see. It was a lot of information in the packet, so it was good to hear your point of view tonight. Just a reminder, we're still in a public hearing at this point, and if any of our board members would like to ask Mr. Rahill any questions or have any comments, now would be the time to do so. So I'm going to look for any hands up. I don't see any hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and close this public hearing at this time, and I'm going to reopen our regular scheduled meeting. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rahill, again. I appreciate all the work. We're going to move on to item number 13. And the item 13.1 is the consideration and approval of adult school instruction board policy. And I'm going to ask Dr. Beatson to talk with us about that.
Sure. Thank you again. So what I'm bringing forth to you tonight is a board policy and administrative regulation for adult school instruction. It is coming to you in an expedited format, just a one board meeting. Several meetings ago, you adopted a course outline for adult ed graduation course, and this policy underscores all of that. It really outlines what it will take for students to graduate from adult school with a adult school diploma, and what those courses would be, and how students would access them. And so it's very exciting because we have some hopeful graduates from adult school. They're starting to take those courses, and this is the policy that describes what that all looks like. I can answer any further questions if you have them.
Any questions? I don't see anybody raising their hand. So again, Dr. Beatson, thank you for your time putting this together for us. So at this time, I'd like to see if I have a motion to consider and approve the Adult School Instruction Board Policy, BP/AR 6200, Adult School Instruction. Do I have a first? Mrs. Furchi?
I'll make a motion to approve the adult school policy.
Thank you. Second, Dr. Moss? All right, thank you. Motion's approved. We're going to move on to action item. Yes, we are. Please, thank you. Yes.
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 All right, we'll move on to 13.2. The consideration and approval of the updated job description for instructional intervention aides. And for this, we're going to call on Dr. Gill to share information.
Good evening, Madam President, Governing Board, Dr. Young, Cabinet members, and community members. So this is a request from our Ed Services Department, actually. We have reading tutors at our elementary schools, mainly working with kindergarten through second grade students through a block grant currently. We have been fortunate enough that with the expanded learning funding and the other grant funding, we would be able to expand this service to meet our students' mathematics and reading needs to K-8, hopefully. So original job description only focused on younger grades and also focused only on reading. And our request is for you to approve this job description for instructional intervention aides so that we can hire redo the current employees job description and hire additional. Again, these are all temporary positions. All we call them short term in classified, so that we can provide math and reading support to the students. It is the same salary as the reading tutor. Salary has not been changed, but the duties and the grade levels would be changed.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gill. So I'd like to see if we have a motion on the table for the consideration and approval of the updated job description for intervention aides. Do I have a first?
I move that we approve the updated job description for instructional aides.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mrs. Martinez, can we have a roll call vote, please? Yes.
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 All right, thank you. Motion passes. Next item is 13.3, consideration and approval of the updated job description for psychologist clinical supervisor. And
Again,
if I can, yes, Dr. Gill, I was just going to
yes.
ask you to speak.
Thank you, Madam President. So this job description, currently we have a psychologist job description in our school district. We have several psychologists who work with our students to meet their mental health needs and so on. But we do not have a psychologist clinical supervisor position. It is very similar to the psychologist position. The major difference is in the two job duties, some job duties and the certification. A clinical psychologist supervisor holds a credential to be able to supervise intern counselors. So like how we have student teachers in the school system, same way counselors also need to work with, but in order for them to get be an intern in a school district, the person who will supervise them must have the certification. This will actually help us to provide more services to the students by bringing in interns from universities, and those are free interns for our students. They will meet their credentialing needs. We will be able to provide this service. So we just need to update this job description to be able to have that credentialing piece, which also obviously changes some duties also because this person will be supervising that. So again, it's the same salary as the psychologist. There is no change in salary. It's just the duties and the credentialing piece is different. I did request Ms. Corona to be here because this request is from Ms. Corona in case you have additional questions. But that's in a nutshell, that's the gist of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Definitely.
Thank you, Mrs. Crona, for being here. Appreciate you being here. All right. What we'd like to do is find out if there's a first to make for consideration and approval of the updated job description for psychologist and clinical supervisor. Do I have a first?
Actually, I would just like to say too that I'm really glad that our district is going to be able to start engaging with the interns. I think that's going to be great for our students. So thank you. And with that said, I will make a motion to approve the clinical psychologist job description. Is that the title? Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Martinez. Can we get a roll call vote, please? Yes.
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 Okay, thank you so much. Moving on to our last item for the evening, it's 13.4, and it's regarding the consideration and approval of the updated job description for mental health coordinator. And again, I invite Dr. Gill to share with us.
Thank you, Madam President. So I do want to say that the mental health coordinator, we have a fabulous mental health coordinator currently, but there are some duties in a mental health coordinator position that are not written in the job description, but it's important for us to provide those type of duties, such as non-public schools transitioning back to the district, those duties, or when we need to have a student who has mental health issues because they were hospitalized, those need to be provided. So we're taking some duties out, such as writing a behavior plan. We have a behaviorist. We don't need a mental health coordinator to do that part, but there are other needs that students have. So we're basically expanding it more for mental health needs and so on. And again, I want to thank creativity from Ms. Crona for both of these job descriptions to think out of the box, to really take this opportunity to really align them with the needs of our students. So that's again, in a summary, that's why we're bringing that forward. Again, the salary will be the same. It's just some of the duties will be changing.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Gill. So at this time, I would like to find out if we have a motion on the floor for consideration and approval of the updated job description for mental health coordinator. Do I have a first?
I can go ahead and make the motion that we approve item 13.4, which is the consideration and approval of the updated job description for the mental health coordinator.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Either one's fine. You could go.
All right.
Ms. Gross.
Thanks, you guys. I'm glad you were so enthusiastic. That's awesome. And at this time, if I could get a roll call vote, Ms. Martinez? Yes.
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 So at this time, we're at the end of our agenda, and I just want to thank all of you that tuned in and thank everybody here that's involved in the meeting this evening. And also, sincere congratulations to all the students that will be promoting or graduating this next week or two. It's very exciting, and we're glad we were able to provide some sort of graduation ceremony. And it's, better than last year, and we'll hopefully have everything normal for next year. But thank you so much, and congratulations. We wish you well on your future endeavors. And with that, I'm going to say goodnight, and I'm closing our meeting at 9:06 p.m. And we'll see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.